Hey everybody, Garcia here. So Portal Games has announced that they are coming out with a new faction for Imperial settlers, the Amazons. And I, for one, am very excited to see what they bring to the table. But we've already got all these expansions here. We've got the 4 that came in the original base game, Romans, Egyptians, Barbarians, and the Japanese, as well as 2 other factions that came out afterwards, each one on their own, the Atlanteans and the Aztecs. And so I was inspired by the announcement of the Amazons and sort of getting fired up about the game again. And I wanted to go ahead and rank these 6 factions that we already have now. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you from my most favorite to my least favorite and what it is I like about them. I'll start with my number 6 and actually work my way up to my favorite faction here. All right, I like all of these. Let me start off by saying that. I do enjoy playing them all. I actually jump around quite a bit when I play the game. But I do have my favorites, and I'll talk about sort of how I find each one of them feels a little bit and what I like about that. So here we go. The faction I enjoy playing with the least are actually the Atlanteans here, which are one of the expansion factions. And the reason for that, for me being, this being my least favorite expansion, is because I find them to be very confusing and things get very out of hand quickly with their technology tokens. They're very fun to play, and their gimmick, this idea of at the end of the game, everything on this side of the board here simply sinks to the bottom of the ocean, is very thematic. I love the theme in this, and when I do feel like playing them, I can really get into that theme. But playing them and actually putting them into effect can be a little bit fiddly, and the rules are a little harder to grasp in this one than in any of the other factions, whether it be the expansion ones or the ones built into the base game. And just the way that tokens work, how much they generate extra for you, how you manipulate them, having to add some of those cards into the base deck can get a little funny for the other factions to deal with. Those tokens, the technology tokens, and the other factions, how to use them well. I actually found them to be rather underpowered myself, and I've always found them to be really hard to play and do well with them, which is funny because most people, from what I've gathered and read, find them to be overpowered. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe I'm just bad at playing them. Maybe that's why I don't like them. But I find them to be, again, basically the most fiddly of them all, which is why I like them the least. I still enjoy playing with them. Like I said, I jump around quite a bit, so I'm perfectly happy to throw down with the Atlanteans here, but they are my least favorite, and I get the least joy out of playing with them. So next up, we've got the Japanese, and I think that's partly because they follow a little bit of what the Atlanteans do, and that is they add some solid complexity to the game as compared to the other factions in the game. So the Japanese, their main thing is that their main positive thing is they have a lot of deals. They deal in food quite a bit. That resource is very important to them. And they deal in making deals quite a bit. Now, the drawback to that is, of course, you have to protect your own buildings with samurai because your buildings are also vulnerable, and so they can also be raised. But they are usually very safe at the beginning of the game and normally can be protected well while having undercost cards that are a little easier to deploy than some of the other factions and being very powerful themselves in-game. They give me a bit of the same vibe that the Atlanteans do. Do well during the game. Don't worry too much about endgame, right? You are not going to build a massive tableau, or it will be harder anyway, than it would be with, say, the Egyptians. With the Egyptians, hang on to your hats because the table is going to be flooded with cards. With the Japanese, especially if you've got opponents that are a little more aggressive, you'll be fighting to keep your own buildings around, so you have to be very adaptable. As soon as you play something, intend to use it right away. Don't play something in case you need it, right? And so I find the way they play is interesting and very different from the other factions, but they actually feel like an expansion that should have, a faction rather, that should have been an expansion, you know? I would have liked to have a more traditional fourth faction be included in the base game. Now, it's nice that this is in there because it does give folks the the sort of glimpse into the future of what's possible, you know, with the Imperial Settlers game engine. But I find them, out of the 3 base games, I usually do not pick them. I like the other ones. They're a little more straightforward. They get to the core of the good stuff a little more easily, and they have usually a lot less text on their cards. So the Japanese cards here oftentimes have quite a bit of text on their cards. So there you go. That is my next pick. This is number 5. My number 4 pick is the Barbarians. The Barbarians are a very straightforward group. They are one of the recommended starting groups, in fact. And their thing is, the thing they can carry over is people. And by the way, the Japanese could carry over food, as I said. The Atlanteans could carry over their technology tokens. So, the Barbarians here can carry over people, and their main thing is attacking. They are, of course, Barbarians, and you are going to put yourself up by putting everybody else down. They really have a lot of attacking power. They get a lot of things for attacking, for raising, and if you are able to pull off some of these combos, you are going to be very happy, as you are, as I said, putting your opponents down, reaping lots and lots of rewards. They're a fun group to play, especially if I'm feeling more combative, you know. There are others that I like more that are a little less sort of in your face. And honestly, I think this game always did, as a little aside here, I think this game always did very well not being a combative, confrontational game. I like the interaction, especially the interaction that some of the later expansions added, the first expansion mainly, with the idea of open productions and, you know, being able to communicate with other players, so to speak. But I was never that interested in this game becoming a fighting game, a war game, if you would. So the Barbarians can do it. They're good at doing it. But I usually enjoy just sort of building up my own thing and looking for my own combos that don't rely on messing other people over. So fun, simple, but very, very confrontational. So next up, we've got the Romans here. And the Romans are an interesting faction because they are a little bit hard to sort of manage out of the gate. They're a little bit tricky to sort of come to terms with. Getting your combos into play can be a little bit trickier. Getting everything to start working together can be a little bit trickier. And so I find that they usually have a slower start in the game. But once you've got your key pieces in play, then they work very well. And they really do, you know, they go to work for you. I enjoy that they can build quite a bit. Though they do start slowly, as I said. They can carry over swords from round to round, so even if you're only producing your base one, and if you're not using it to raise one of your own cards and get some resources, if you don't need them, you could save a couple from round to round and maybe mess with your opponents if the need be, remove a key piece from their engine, you know. They're able to do that fairly easily, but you are going to be able to build up your own faction and really, you know, again, get your engine going while reacting to what your opponent is doing, and so I find them very versatile. I never quite know how the game's gonna go when I'm playing with the Romans, or against the Romans even, right? And I like that. I like that I'm not quite sure if I'm going, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna build as much as I can. I am going to attack you as much as I can. With the Romans, I'm never quite sure. And I'll tell you, sometimes I've had games where I just cannot get off the ground. My engine doesn't come together, and I get destroyed. But I like the way they play. I enjoy the faction, the flavor that's included in this one, and I find it to be a very interesting and a clever faction, one that I certainly enjoy playing. So there you go. That is my number 3 favorite. Next up, we've got the Egyptians, and the Egyptians are my second favorite faction. They are all about big money. They have gold and gold galore. And as I said earlier, this faction usually is going to build everything that there is to be built. I enjoy playing with it, though. Well, here's the thing: I enjoy playing with them because I'm usually a very quick player. I don't have a lot of analysis paralysis. I don't particularly enjoy playing against them, which is partly why they're my second choice here, because usually your opponent is going to have more turns than you when you are playing against the Egyptians. At least that's been my experience so far. By the time I'm done, they are still taking turns, spending gold, cashing in gold for more buildings, then cashing in more gold on those buildings to get victory points. And it's just gold, 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 and they can make quite a bit of it. They can use quite a bit of it. It's very versatile. But they are, once they get going, and they get going much quicker than the Romans, I find, then they are very hard to stop. They'll have a lot of turns. So I enjoy playing them quite a bit. They are, straight up from a thematic sort of point of view, my favorite, okay? But playing against them, especially with a slow player, tends to draw out a little bit. So there you go. That's the Egyptians, my second favorite, my favorite out of the core box. And having said that and seen all the other ones, you know that my number one pick then is actually the other faction that was released standalone, and that is the Aztecs. And what I like about the Aztecs so much is simply the fact that the mechanism they added to the game is so fun. And I love this kind of uncertainty when I'm playing this game. So the idea that what they add is this idea of prayer, and it's, you'll call out something that you're looking for, and then you'll draw cards from the top of the common deck looking for a color. So they make color matter quite a bit, but you're also never quite sure what you're going to get. And that sounds like it leaves a lot up to luck, and partly it does, though the Aztecs here do have those prayer tokens, right, that let them mitigate luck. You know what you're getting if you use the tokens, but I love the mechanism. I like it in this faction. I like splashing it into the other factions, this idea of prayer, this idea of, let's see, let's find one here. Here you go. So it says, spend one worker to pray 5. You may place one card under this building, for the rest of the game. You may use these placed cards in any future pray actions. Pray 5 means draw 5 and take one of those. And so let's find a simpler one here. Let's see. Production. Okay, here we go. Pray, this is the Temple of the Rising Sun. So spend one worker to pray 5, draw 5 cards. For each brown, gray, or red card, you may decide to spend a matching resource, and you gain 1 victory point for each resource spent, and 1 victory point for each resource of each resource type spent. This is huge. That means I can draw 5. If I get 2 of the 3 colors, and say 3 of the cards are in there, that's 3 points for one thing, 2 victory points for the other thing. I love it. But that could be a massive dud. You know what I mean? That could just not work out at all. But when it works, it's so satisfactory. It's so fun to roll the dice, so to speak, with these characters. And I really enjoy it. And yeah, I used to have, like I said, the tokens, which is, mitigates that die roll. But I have fun from turn to turn with this faction more than any other, largely based on that idea. This prayer concept, I think, is simple. So unlike the Atlanteans, it adds something new that I can very easily teach and enjoy. And I get all the rules the first time I read the rule book. And it does something that the other ones don't do. And it's just super fun. So that is my number one faction for the game, the Aztecs. So it's kind of interesting that my least favorite and my most favorite are both from expansions. I do wonder where the Amazons are going to end up for me. I cannot wait to play with them. I'm very excited for it. But there you go. Tell me in the comments which ones are your favorites, how you would rank all 6 of these, and why you like some or perhaps don't like some of the other ones, all right? So that's it. Thanks for tuning in and going over this with me, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.